Ever looked out your window and seen concrete trucks pouring slurry into the creek your grandpa taught you to fish in? That's what happened when the brand new Serenity Springs HOA next door decided my family's natural waterway was an eyesore. They didn't just trespass, they kicked Mother Nature square in the shins, and trust me, she's got a hell of a backhand. My name's John, mid-50s, former environmental engineer turned wildlife photographer. I live on a quiet patch of land on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, where the suburbs haven't quite eaten everything yet. My property's got a spring-fed creek out back, clear water, smooth pebbles, the kind of place you'd see on a postcard or in a beer commercial. It's been in my family since my grandpa taught me how to cast a line. These days, it's bordered by Serenity Springs, a shiny new HOA development packed with million-dollar McMansions and folks who think nature is a golf course. That morning, I was sipping coffee, my Nikon gear spread across the kitchen table like a general's battle map. Old photos of me and Grandpa by the creek sat on the mantel, all faded smiles and fish stories. My property survey map was tucked in the office cabinet, gathering dust, until it wasn't. The piece shattered when a low rumble hit, like a T-Rex had wandered into the neighborhood. I stepped outside and heard it, the growl of heavy machinery, coming from my creek. I jogged to the back of my lot, and there it was, a scene straight out of a contractor's fever dream. 3 concrete trucks, chutes swinging like elephant trunks, were spewing gray sludge into my creek bed. Not on the HOA's side, mind you, on my side, well past the property line. The work crew, decked out in vests screaming, Serenity Springs HOA approved contractor, didn't even glance up. They were turning my waterway into a post-apocalyptic skateboard ramp. I stormed over, boots sinking into the damp earth, and flagged down the foreman, a guy with a sunburned neck and a clipboard he treated like the 10 Commandments. "What the hell are you doing to my creek?" I demanded. He barely looked up. "Just following work orders, sir. Drainage mitigation project. HOA approved." His tone said, "Go back to your coffee, old man. Drainage mitigation? This is my property. You're killing a natural waterway." I was about 2 seconds from yanking that clipboard and beating him with it when the chute swung down again, unleashing a fresh wave of concrete. It swallowed the creek bed, coating pebbles, drowning reeds, and, God help me, trapping frogs that thrashed in the toxic ooze, their little legs kicking like they knew the end was near. That's when I saw her. Tiffany, late 40s, HOA president, standing on the edge of her perfect HOA kingdom. She was all designer sunglasses and a white SUV so clean it probably had its own maid. In her hand, a tablet glowed with what I'd later learn were landscaping plans. She watched the destruction like a Roman emperor at a gladiator match, arms crossed, lips curled into a smirk that said she'd already won. I charged forward, yelling, "Stop this now." But the ground was slick, and I slipped, scraping my arm on a rock. As I scrambled up, the concrete kept coming, turning my creek into a grotesque scar. Frogs went still. Reeds disappeared. Tiffany's smirk didn't budge. She looked like she was posing for the cover of Smug Monthly. Seeing those frogs trapped, helpless in the hardening sludge, that flipped a switch in me. What would you have done right then? Your land, your memories, your wildlife, wrecked by some HOA queen grinning like she just aced a chess game. Drop a comment below, how far would you go when someone trashes what's yours? I didn't punch anyone, tempting as it was. Instead, I grabbed my Nikon from the house, years of engineering discipline kicking in. I snapped photos and videos, the trucks, the concrete, the dying wildlife, Tiffany's smug face, the contractor's logo, and the exact spot relative to my property's oak tree landmark. Every shot was dated, every angle deliberate. If these clowns wanted a fight, I'd bury them in evidence. Back in my office, I pulled out the property survey map, the one that's been right since my grandpa's day. It confirmed what I already knew, the creek was 100% on my land. Those concrete trucks had no business crossing the line. Worse, I knew the fallout. This wasn't just trespassing, it was a Clean Water Act violation, a middle finger to the EPA, and a hydrological disaster waiting to happen. Block a creek. You're not stopping water, you're just telling it where to go next. And I had a feeling Serenity Springs was about to get real wet. I sat back, staring at the survey, my camera still warm from the shoot. Tiffany and her HOA thought they'd prettied up their view. They didn't know they'd just declared war on physics, and Mother Nature doesn't lose. Tiffany figured her concrete barrier wrapped up the creek problem. She was wrong. It was the opening act of a disaster she couldn't lawyer her way out of. While she was likely admiring her HOA's handiwork, I was in my office, turning her victory lap into a legal landmine. My desk was evidence central. Nikon photos and videos were backed up, files labeled with military precision. My computer screen glowed with TCEQ regulations, Clean Water Act Section 404, and Army Corps permit requirements. Pouring concrete into a creek without permits is a federal no-go. My leather logbook tracked every detail, contractor name, truck plates, Tiffany's orders to the foreman. If this hit court, I'd have an airtight case. I drafted a cease and desist letter that pulled no punches. It called out the trespass, property damage, environmental violations, and the flooding her concrete dam would trigger. I demanded the concrete's removal, creek restoration, and a ban on further incursions. I filed a copy in my evidence binder and sent the original via certified mail to Tiffany and the Serenity Springs HOA board. The postal receipt went into my logbook. Your move, Tiffany. The reply came fast, a smug letter from a law firm with a name like a yacht club. It claimed the creek was a disputed boundary, called the Concrete Essential Erosion Control, accused me of neglecting my land, and denied environmental wrongdoing. They refused to remove the concrete and threatened to sue for harassment if I pushed back. The letter joined my binder, another misstep documented. Tiffany thought she could scare me off with fancy letterhead. I'd dealt with worse than her in my engineering days. I knew water didn't care about lawyers or HOA rules. Block a creek, and it finds a new path, likely through someone's garage. I needed proof when the floods came. Using my wildlife photography skills, I set up 3 weather-resistant trail cameras along the property line. One watched the concrete scar, another tracked the creek's flow, and the third eyed the low-lying Serenity Springs backyards. Hidden in brush, their feed streamed to my tablet. These cameras were my ace in the hole. Even without heavy rain, trouble was brewing. The HOA's sprinklers sent runoff toward the concrete, pooling water and turning the ground soggy. The fence line near the closest Serenity Springs homes looked swampy. I took dated Nikon photos, logged the details, and waited. Nature was gearing up, and Tiffany's paradise was in for a soaking. Online, I dug deeper. County permit records showed no creek work approvals. The TCEQ violations database had nothing on Serenity Springs yet. The contractor had a history of environmental sloppiness. Every fact went into my logbook. I wasn't just building a case, I was crafting a reckoning. Days passed. Tiffany's SUV patrolled the HOA streets, her sunglasses flashing like she ruled the world. She probably thought I'd backed off, cowed by her lawyer's threats. Nope. I was reviewing trail cam footage, sipping bourbon. The cameras caught it all, a raccoon sniffing the concrete, runoff pooling higher daily, Tiffany strolling by with her tablet, blind to the disaster brewing. I saved every clip. When the rains hit, I'd have a highlight reel. I emailed the HOA board, copying the TCEQ. I attached a photo of the concrete barrier, time-stamped, with water lapping its edges from a drizzle. Remove it now, I wrote, or the EPA gets the next letter. Silence. Tiffany and her board bet their million-dollar homes on concrete beating physics. Bad call. The trail cams kept rolling. One night, I caught a Serenity Springs homeowner in flip-flops poking at the muddy ground near his fence, looking puzzled. His backyard was about to become a pond, and he didn't know it. I logged it, homeowner, 9:14 p.m., inspecting flood zone. The evidence stacked up, and so did my confidence. This wasn't just about my creek, it was about an HOA's arrogance imploding. I leaned back, bourbon glass catching the computer's glow. The creek's trickle was gone, silenced by Tiffany's concrete. But I knew water from my engineering years, its flow, its fury. Storms were in the forecast, and when they hit, Serenity Springs would learn a hard lesson: you don't mess with a creek and stay dry. Tiffany thought she outsmarted water. She was about to get a masterclass, and I was ready to watch. They poured concrete to stop a trickle, thinking they'd tamed nature. They were about to get a hydrology lesson from Mother Nature herself, and the tuition was steep. The storms rolled in, thunder rattling my windows as rain pounded for hours. I watched from my porch, tablet streaming trail cam feeds, as the creek swelled. The concrete barrier did exactly what I'd predicted: it turned into a dam. Water surged over and around it, hunting for the easiest path, straight into Serenity Springs' pristine backyards. Low-lying patios vanished under muddy waves. Manicured lawns became ponds. The HOA's decorative pathways drowned. My Nikon sat on a tripod by the window, snapping shots of the chaos. I jotted in my logbook: heavy rain, 4 inches, 3 hours. The evidence was piling up, and so was the water. The trail cams captured it all in glorious, date-stamped detail. One feed showed water breaching a homeowner's patio, lapping at glass doors. Another caught an ornamental bridge in the HOA's common area disappearing underwater, like a cheap Atlantis. A third showed runoff cascading from the concrete barrier directly into a backyard, turning a rose garden into a swamp. I saved every frame. Tiffany's drainage solution was performing like a sieve in a hurricane. By morning, Serenity Springs was a soggy mess, and the HOA's Facebook group lit up like a fireworks show. Homeowners posted frantic photos: flooded yards, garages with water lines, flower beds now fish habitats. They blamed the developer's drainage, freak weather, clogged storm drains, everything but the obvious. Tiffany jumped in with a post, all corporate polish, claiming the storm was unprecedented but praising the HOA's recent drainage improvements for saving the day. She dodged questions about the creek, deflecting like a politician caught in a scandal. I screenshotted her post, adding it to my binder. Keep spinning, Tiffany. I knew the truth needed to spread, but I wasn't about to wade into their Facebook swamp. Instead, I edited a tight video montage from the trail cam footage. It showed the creek rising, hitting the concrete, and diverting straight into Serenity Springs yards. I threw in a quick shot of my ignored cease and desist letter for good measure. I burned the video onto a USB drive and slipped it to 2 homeowners I'd pegged as reasonable, a guy who'd griped about Tiffany's dues hikes and a woman who'd questioned her landscaping obsession. I handed them the drives during a chance meet at the property line, saying only, "Check this out. It shows how the water's flowing." They nodded, eyes narrowing. The seeds were planted. Within days, the tide started turning. The guy, let's call him Steve, posted in the Facebook group, asking why the HOA poured concrete in the creek without permits. He didn't name me, but he referenced the video, describing the water's path. The woman, Karen, not that Karen, followed up, quoting my warning letter about flooding risks. She asked why Tiffany ignored it. The group exploded. Homeowners who'd been quietly grumbling smelled blood. Posts piled up: was the creek work legal? Who approved it? Why are our yards lakes? Tiffany tried to lock the thread, but screenshots spread faster than the floodwater. Doubt was creeping in, and her grip was slipping. I kept documenting. My Nikon caught new shots of the damage: a Serenity Springs street sign half submerged, a mailbox floating like a buoy. The trail cams recorded a homeowner in waders, futilely shoveling mud from his driveway. I logged it all, cross-referencing rainfall data from the Weather Service. The binder grew thicker, the case stronger. Tiffany's narrative was unraveling, and the water wasn't done yet. The HOA board stayed silent, probably huddled with their lawyers, but the homeowners weren't waiting. Steve and Karen kept pushing, sharing the video with neighbors. One posted it to a local Reddit thread, where it got traction. Comments roasted the HOA, classic overreach. Bet they didn't even check the survey. Who's paying for this mess? I stayed out of it, letting the truth do the heavy lifting. My tablet pinged with new trail cam alerts, more runoff, more pooling, more proof. The concrete wasn't just a mistake, it was a beacon, shouting liability to anyone with eyes. I sipped coffee, reviewing the latest footage. A Serenity Springs kid in rain boots splashed through what used to be a lawn, his mom yelling from the porch. The scene was almost comical, but the stakes weren't. Those million-dollar homes were taking a beating, and the concrete was the culprit. Tiffany thought she'd prettied up her HOA's view. Instead, she'd built a funnel for disaster. The forecast promised more rain, and I knew the next storm would hit harder. My cameras were charged, my logbook ready. Serenity Springs was about to learn that water doesn't negotiate, and neither do I. Tiffany tried blaming the rain, the developer, even the homeowners. But physics doesn't care about HOA bylaws. The water was coming, and her concrete dam was rolling out the red carpet for it. The second storm hit like a freight train, dumping rain for 2 days straight. Serenity Springs' saturated ground turned into a lakebed. The blocked creek roared, shoving water past the concrete and straight into the development. Streets flooded curb to curb. Lawns vanished under brown waves. Crawl spaces filled, garages became wading pools, and water breached the first floors of several million-dollar homes. Homeowners slogged through their yards, dragging soaked furniture to higher ground. My Nikon captured it all from the property line: a pergola half-submerged, a Tesla marooned in a driveway, a kid's swing set floating like driftwood. I logged the details: 6 inches of rain, 36 hours, and added the photos to my binder. The trail cams kept rolling, their feeds showing water pouring off the concrete barrier into backyards, clear as day. The HOA's clubhouse became ground zero for a homeowner meltdown. The emergency meeting was standing room only, with residents shouting over each other. The air crackled with panic and fury. Tiffany stood at the front, flanked by the board, her usual polish replaced by a deer-in-headlights stare. The HOA's lawyer, sweating through his suit, clutched a stack of papers that weren't going to help. My allies, Steve and Karen, didn't waste time. Steve hooked his laptop to a projector and played my trail cam montage on a loop: creek rising, concrete blocking, water flooding yards. Karen held up my cease and desist letter, reading my warning about inevitable flooding. "You were told," she said, pointing at Tiffany. "You caused this." The room erupted. Homeowners who'd been skeptical now saw the truth in high def. Someone yelled, "Why didn't you listen?" Another demanded Tiffany's resignation. The lawyer tried to calm things, mumbling about ongoing investigations, but no one was buying it. I'd been invited by Steve to present my case, and I took the floor, calm as ever. I walked them through the evidence: my property survey showing the creek was mine, photos of the illegal concrete pour, the trapped frogs, my ignored letter, the first floods footage, and now this deluge. I cited the Clean Water Act, Section 404, and warned of TCEQ and EPA fines, plus mandatory restoration orders. The room went quiet, then exploded again, all eyes on Tiffany. She cracked. Her voice shook as she yelled, deflecting blame to me: "He sabotaged the drains, then the developer, then the weather." It was a tantrum, not a defense. Her authority dissolved like sugar in the rain. The other board members edged away, faces pale, sensing the lawsuits coming. The crowd chanted for her ouster. By the end, Tiffany was a ghost of her former self, stripped of control. The board, cornered by a homeowner revolt and my evidence, agreed to hire independent hydrological engineers and explore removing the concrete. It was a start, but the damage was done. I kept documenting. My trail cams caught homeowners piling sandbags, useless against the relentless water. One feed showed a Serenity Springs street, now a canal, with a kayak drifting by, almost funny if it weren't so grim. My Nikon snapped a for sale sign sinking into a muddy lawn. I logged it all, cross-referencing rainfall data. The binder was practically bursting. Online, the Reddit thread about the flooding blew up, with locals and ex-HOA victims piling on. Serenity Swamp was trending, and Tiffany's name was mud. The homeowners weren't waiting for the board to act. Steve, Karen, and a dozen others, armed with my video and letter, filed complaints with the TCEQ, EPA, and Army Corps. I joined them, submitting my full evidence package, photos, videos, logs, the works. The agencies wouldn't ignore this. Filling a creek without permits is a bureaucratic bullseye. The HOA's Facebook group was a war zone, with residents posting new flood photos daily and demanding accountability. Tiffany's last post, a weak call for unity, got ratioed into oblivion. She'd lost the narrative, the board, and the community. I sat on my porch, tablet showing the latest trail cam feed, water still trickling off the concrete, pooling in a Serenity Springs backyard. My logbook noted the storm's end, but the forecast hinted at more rain. The HOA's engineers would confirm what I already knew: the concrete had to go, and it wouldn't be cheap. Serenity Springs was learning the hard way that you can't bully nature. Tiffany thought she could control the creek with a checkbook and a smirk. Now her $1 million paradise was a soggy disaster, and my evidence was the match that lit the fuse. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had turned, and I was ready for the final act. They buried my creek in concrete to build their paradise. Instead, they built a monument to arrogance, now permanently residing in a swamp of their own making. The fallout hit Serenity Springs like a tidal wave. The TCEQ and EPA slapped the HOA with hefty fines for Clean Water Act violations, backed by an Army Corps administrative order demanding the concrete's removal and creek restoration under strict oversight. The agencies had my evidence, photos, videos, logs, and it was bulletproof. The HOA's lawyers scrambled, but you can't spin a federal mandate. Meanwhile, homeowners unleashed a legal onslaught. Multi-million-dollar lawsuits piled up, targeting the HOA, the board, and Tiffany personally for negligence, property damage, and fraud over hiding the illegal work. The HOA's insurance balked, refusing to cover intentional violations. My binder, bursting with documentation, was the plaintiff's playbook. The financial toll was brutal. Engineering reports confirmed the concrete removal would be a nightmare, expensive, complex, potentially involving hazardous material disposal if the mix was substandard. Worse, the altered water table meant Serenity Springs needed costly drainage systems to avoid chronic flooding. The HOA levied massive special assessments, gut-punching homeowners already reeling from water damage. For sale signs sprouted like weeds, but buyers weren't biting. Who wants a swamp-adjacent McMansion? Foreclosures loomed, property values tanked, and the once pristine development earned a new nickname online: Serenity Swamp Estates. I logged the chaos: new lawsuits, assessment notices, Reddit threads roasting the HOA. My trail cams, still rolling, caught homeowners packing U-Hauls in the rain. Tiffany's empire collapsed. Named in lawsuits and facing personal fines, she resigned, though the homeowner revolt had already neutered her. Shunned by neighbors she'd once lorded over, she put her soggy house on the market. It sold at a fire sale price. Nobody wanted the HOA queen's cursed address. She vanished from the area, leaving behind a legacy of flooded yards and legal bills. I didn't shed a tear. My Nikon snapped one last shot of her for sale sign, half tilted in the mud, and I filed it in the binder. Good riddance. For me, justice came quieter. The HOA settled, covering my legal fees, initial property damage, and funds for creek restoration monitoring. I didn't need their money to feel vindicated. Watching their paradise sink was payment enough. Using my engineering background, I oversaw the creek's restoration. Contractors, under TCEQ supervision, ripped out the concrete, graded the banks, and planted native grasses and willows. Water trickled back, slow at first, then steady. Frogs returned, their croaks a middle finger to Tiffany's legacy. My property, now a natural haven bordering the infamous Serenity Swamp, drew birdwatchers and locals tired of HOA nonsense. I logged the restoration progress, noting water clarity and wildlife sightings. The binder stayed on my shelf, a trophy of a fight well fought. I sat on my porch, Nikon nearby, listening to the creek's soft gurgle. A kingfisher darted along the bank, and a frog plopped into the water. The irony was rich. Serenity Springs chased artificial perfection and got chaos. Nature, diverted but never defeated, carved its own path, proving stronger than concrete or bylaws. I toyed with a sign idea for the creek, Serenity Creek, reopened after human stupidity, but decided the water spoke for itself. My tablet pinged with a final trail cam clip, a Serenity Springs homeowner staring at his flooded lawn, shaking his head. I saved it, then shut the system down. The story was over. This tale of concrete karma and watery revenge deserves a nod. If it hit the mark, smash that like button. Share it with anyone who's tangled with an HOA drunk on power. Subscribe for more stories where nature and common sense win, and ring that bell to catch the next one. Got your own HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments, let's hear how you fought the good fight.